in collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
This week's programme is all about the environment, and I'm afraid it's bad news and more bad news. The Green Party slams the government for new plans to develop beaches in the Agamas.
This is the worst government we ever had with regards to the environment. Nothing is stopping them. Developers can build anywhere. No rules, no regulations, no protection for the environment, nothing.
There is a glimmer of good news if you want to join the Pollinator project.
And one of the aspects of climate change is the decline of the diversity of species. And here in particular, insects such as bees or butterflies play a particularly important role.
And Friends of the Earth Europe slam the EU Commission for trying to roll back regulations on GMOs.
And now we see a push from the biotech industry to get the safety checks and the labeling rules weakened.
News has broken about new plans for the beaches at Argaga and Yalias in the west of the island. These are turtle nesting beaches. We've talked many times on the programme before about the importance of protecting particularly our endangered species. So we're joined by the leader of the Greens Party this week, Bambos Theobemptou. Bambos, what are these plans? I thought these beaches were protected areas, especially because of the sea turtles.
These were protected areas, but the intention nowadays from government is to make these public beach. That is, with umbrellas, people will go there and lie on the sand as well. So in order to do this, there are two things that they are actually doing now. One is to get the permit from the forestry department to use these forest beaches for this. And the other is apply, and this is the worst part of it, they will apply to the beach commission to get a permit so that they will have the umbrellas and everything else that you get on an organized beach anywhere else on the island. So they are actually moving to do this, just another beach with umbrellas. And I expect that they will build a small restaurant and toilets and stuff like that.
At the moment, people who want to go to these beaches are entitled to do so as long as they take their own umbrella and their sunbeds or chairs or whatever. So this seems to be purely a money-making issue for the local communities.
Exactly. This is the intention that they have, is to give money to the local community. This is clear. This is the demand that they have for some time now. It's not something new. We knew about these demands a long time ago, that they wanted to do this.
But why are they doing it now? Because again, I thought that the whole area, and particularly any turtle nesting beaches, were protected areas. Are they not either Natura 2000 or part of the special interest areas of the EU?
The protected areas for the turtles, it's something that is handled by the fisheries department. Forest land is handled by the forest department. The Department for the Environment is the Department of the Environment, and all these three together, they are under the Ministry of Agriculture. So it's very easy to get them to give orders and get them to get together and find the way around to do this. Elections are coming up. The ruling party is not doing very well. So they are looking for votes. What is happening now is unbelievable. They're actually going to build asphalt roads in the forest area of Agamas, and they're also going to have restaurants on the beach in Agamas. They tried to do this some years ago, and everyone in Parliament was angry with them. They withdrew this, and now they found another way around this. Instead of changing the law, they decided to do this by orders do this the legal way, but to me it's illegal.
You mean basically that they're bypassing Parliament, is that right?
Yes, they try to get it in the law so that any forest area that ends up on the sea that has a beach included, that forest area will be able to be allocated to a municipality or a private company or a private person to develop. So that we stopped. Just to explain what is the forest area, in Cyprus a forest area is any area that we declare it to be a forest area, no matter whether it has trees in it or not. And the forest areas that they were looking at were all the beaches in Agamas, because Agamas, the west coast of Agamas is a long stretch of forest area, Lara and all these areas that people know. Also the other areas they were looking for were the areas near Petra Duroniu, the place where the Aphrodite rock is, because there they want to build restaurants and they want to do a place for weddings. Rasudi in Limassol, which is 1.5 kilometers stretch of land along the coast with trees in it, is unique on the island, the Rasudi area. And the other area that they wanted to give to municipalities or to private companies was the Konnos area in Ayanapa. So this didn't go through, and now they came up with a new idea to do this in a roundabout way.
We're not going to have any areas of natural, wild vegetation and coast left at this rate. What can be done, Bambos?
I don't know, with this government, I said it many times, this is the worst government we ever had with regards to the environment. Nothing is stopping them. Developers can build anywhere, and no rules, no regulations, no protection for the environment, nothing. This is the worst time I spent since the 1980s with regards to the protection of the environment.
And what about the outlook for the turtles if these things go ahead? Because I think a lot of people don't realise that if you mess up a beach where turtles do go and nest, they don't go and find another beach, do they? Because they always come back to the beach where they were born.
They always come back to the beach they were born, and this is a place where we have the highest number of turtle nests. This area of the beach, I mean, I know people know Lara, but this is the highest density of turtle nests that we have in these areas that we are talking about now. And I expect more is coming. I mean, this is the first bad news. I actually discovered that they were doing stuff like this some time ago. And in order to make sure I changed the law, and I had the support of other political parties, and I managed to change the law so that whenever they declare a beach to be a public beach with umbrellas and everything, and all the facilities, they will publicize it, because things were happening and we didn't know. But even so, they don't publicize which are the applications at the beaches that are actually public now.
And do we know who is going to benefit? We say it'll be money for the community, but obviously if there's a restaurant going to be built, for example, then do we know who is going to get that restaurant? Is that again through the local community, or is it a developer?
Yeah, the local community might give it to a developer to use it. The law says that they have to go for tenders, but it was in the papers yesterday that they actually allocated 10 public beaches to hotels illegally. So we have hotels that they use the public beach for their own benefit, and in some of them it's not even accessible for the public. May I remind you also that in the municipality law that is now in Parliament, in the Internal Affairs Committee, it had a clause that the municipalities will be able to extend the beach, build refreshments areas on the beach, allow for tables and chairs to be on the beach, have different price entry for the beach, so that you have luxury beaches, not so luxury, and then for the public. They would also make any legal constructions that we have now, and also gave them the right to actually build on public forest beaches. This is the other time they tried to bypass the law. I found this out. I made a lot of fuss in the media, and eventually, although there was a reluctance in Parliament, eventually everybody agreed to remove it from all these clauses, take them away from the municipality law.
Well, very soon it seems to me that nobody in Cyprus will be able to go for a swim without having to pay somebody for it. It's disgraceful. Thank you very much for putting us in the picture. Let's hope that the public pressure is enough to do something to turn this around. Bambos Theobemtu, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Last week, the Rotary Club of Nicosia launched the Pollinator project of Rotary Cyprus. It's a long-running project that marks the 116th anniversary of Rotary. Joining us to tell us all about it is climate expert Professor Manfred Lang. Manfred, you have, as I've just said, spent a lot of time looking at climate change, but the Pollinator project is very much connected, is it not, to climate change, because they're both very important parts of a bigger whole.
They are certainly. Indeed, climate change in the Eastern Mediterranean is a long-standing issue that I'm looking at. And one of the aspects of climate change is the diversity of species, or rather the decline of the diversity of species. And here in particular, insects, so-called useful insects, if you wish, such as bees or butterflies, play a particular important role. And it's the role of these insects and other animals as pollinators. Now, pollinators are animals who help plants to reproduce. And you may think, well, that's not so important, but in fact, it is very important because more than 180,000 different plant species and more than 1,200 crops depend critically on the services, so to speak, of pollination. And here in Cyprus, this is equally important because what we've been seeing over the last years and decades is a steady decline of these species on the island, and that is really disturbing and gives cause for concern.
So what is the Pollinator project going to actually do?
Well, what we're trying to do is we try to motivate individuals, we try to motivate other Rotary clubs, but also schools or even municipalities to set up pollinator plots or even pollinator gardens. That's to say, places with a particular arrangement or particular collection of plants that are very useful for pollinators, attract them and provide them with food and habitat to thrive and to help them to increase in their numbers. And it is really pretty simple. You need, in the simplest case, you just need a little plot of land, 1 or 2 square meters, where you plant different plant species, have some source of water for the pollinators, and then let the whole thing grow and thrive, and hope that this will attract these pollinators and again help them to reproduce and grow themselves in number. This is just a small step, I know, but the more people we can find pitching in, the more effective will the project in the end be.
Right, but you don't actually need land even, do you? You know as well as I do that an awful lot of people in Cyprus live in blocks of flats, but they all have balconies and they all have plant pots on those balconies. So what sort of plants should they be looking out for that will survive in a pot and attract those pollinators?
Well, that's a good question, and to be quite honest with you, I cannot really give you good advice. Of course, what we are looking for, and you're very right in pointing this out, are plants that are sort of drought resistant or do not need much water and still have blossoms and provide some sort of food for pollinators. We're currently actually in the process of identifying and finding species that are suitable for, even, as you say, even very small balcony-type plots or pots to be planted. And we're going to cooperate with our colleagues from the Agricultural Research Center to identify the right plants and to move ahead. In fact, I was a bit surprised to learn that in Stravolos there is actually a pollinator garden that has been set up. So we're trying to also cooperate with them to learn from them and to join forces in making the whole project more effective.
And the other thing, of course, I suppose, is that if you do have space and land, but I'm not sure about the legal issues if you live in a town, is having a beehive.
That's correct. Again, I'm sorry, I also cannot really answer. I'm not familiar enough with this. But I mean, it doesn't really have to be a beehive. Of course, a beehive would have the added advantage of ultimately getting some honey. That would be wonderful, of course. But I think it's sufficient for the time being, or it would at least serve the purpose of just having plants that attract bees and help them to collect pollen and honey, and thereby helping to pollinate plants and trees. That's really what we're after.
I think that the Rotary did a survey, didn't it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the survey was really to understand where Rotarians stand with regard to the issue of climate change, if they have an understanding of what climate change means, and ultimately if they would be willing to get engaged in the pollinator project. And the results are really quite encouraging. For one thing, when we asked about climate change, the majority of respondents, that's to say 71%, voiced their concern about climate change and their possible impacts. They also were surprisingly aware of the fact that climate change and biodiversity are linked. And again, a large majority of respondents said they are concerned about the decline of biodiversity in general and of pollinators in particular. And finally, when we did ask them if they would be willing to pitch in and be part of the pollinator project, more than half responded that they are ready to act. So that's quite encouraging. And with the opening or with the launching event, we're hoping to enthuse people more and have them really start to get involved. What we will be needing, and you pointed that out correctly, is to really identify what kind of plants to be used. We have information from other countries. We have, particularly from the US, a lot of information on plants that are cultivated in semi-arid conditions, such as in Cyprus. But I would like to really confirm that with our colleagues from the Agricultural Research Center before going out and making that public.
Okay, well, one I do know that works really well and you can grow in a pot is lavender. And that's sort of silver-leaved. It not only smells lovely, it attracts the insects, it doesn't require a lot of water. So even on a very small scale, you can start off with a single pot.
You're very right. I think that's the beauty of the project. You can do it really on almost any scale. And what we're really interested in is to get involved, or get schools involved, because we feel that this would not only help pollinators, it will also be, I think, a very useful addition to the biology curriculum of schools. You're setting up a pollinator garden, maintaining the garden, observing the pollinator species, and sort of keeping track of what's happening throughout the year. And so we will definitely talk to schools and hope to get them on board as well.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea, because school kids actually these days, if they're in urban areas, tend to have a bit of a disconnect, don't they, between the concrete and the real world as it ought to be. I've said many times before that it'd be great if each school in Cyprus had a little either herb garden or even vegetable patch, and they could add their pollinator plants in between those and do two things at once.
Very right, Yursi. I couldn't agree more. So let's hope that people hear what we're talking about right now, and let's hope that we can really reach out to schools and to the students as well, and enthuse them and get them going.
So if you'd like to get involved and do your bit for our pollinators, all you need to do to find the details is to Google the Pollinator Project Cyprus. You'll get various pages coming up, some of them with contact details, or of course if you know anybody in a Rotary club near you, ask them, because this is happening all over the island.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Friends of the Earth in Europe held a press conference a couple of days ago talking about the European Commission breaking its own rules when it comes to the safety rules for GMOs or genetically modified organisms. How have they broken their own rules, and why is most important? We're joined on this week's programme by Muta Schimpf, who is a food campaigner with Friends of the Earth in Europe. So, Muta, first of all, can you explain the current legislation on GMOs? I thought it was fairly strict in Europe, and now I think it's being weakened. Is that right?
Yes, the current legislation for GMOs in Europe is quite clear. If you want to market GM food or if you want to grow GM seed, the product must first pass some safety checks, and then we have a step to get it authorized. And we also have a labeling system, so farmers and consumers actually know if they work with genetic modified seed or if they want to eat GM food or not. This is the current situation. And now there's a new generation of genetically modified foods and seeds in the pipeline. And now we see a push from the biotech industry to get the safety checks and the labeling rules weakened. And this is where we are at the moment.
So how has the Commission broken its rules? Because it's to do, I think, with the transparency. They always have consultations, don't they, before they make changes to legislation. And who did they consult with this time?
Exactly. At the moment, the Commission is working on a study to describe the future of this new generation of GMO. And there are protocols for all kinds of these consultations, and the European Commission didn't follow its protocols. First of all, the transparency. So the protocols demand that whoever gives input into a consultation like this input is published. And the Commission rejects the publication and keeps it in the dark, not in line with the standards that are defined.
The other thing is who they consulted with, isn't it? Because I think that some stakeholders, like particularly NGOs and other organisations that might have looked upon these new GMOs negatively, had less of an input than the biotech companies.
Exactly. So the basic rule also defined is that any consultation should be broadly and should involve all stakeholders who might be concerned. And all views should be included, and it should avoid that it's biased or that certain groups have a too strong voice. And here the Commission failed completely. They have chosen who can contribute to the consultation, so it was not possible for everybody in Europe or every organization in Europe. And then the Commission has chosen 74% they come from the agri-industry, and only 40% come from the civil society groups. And even worse, a lot of the biotech companies, they were represented in various different umbrella groups. So if you look for the biggest producers of genetically modified seeds on the planet. This is Bayer, and they were represented in 4 or 5 umbrella groups.
Something that I think a lot of people were very concerned about when GMOs first sort of began being planted was the fact that they could cross-pollinate, contaminate other crops that were not genetically modified. Have we got any information on whether that's happened and whether these new GMOs would do the same thing?
Yes, it happened. I mean, we had some really global incidents with contamination. We had one in 2006, and they tried on really small fields rice variety, and then a few years later it was found everywhere. I mean, in all continents you can find traces of a rice that has never been tested on its safety, and it wasn't authorized anywhere. And then around 10 years ago, something similar happened with a linseed that was produced in Canada and again caused global troubles because it was exported, especially to Europe, where it wasn't authorized, and then ended in our Middle East. So we had this problem. And this is why it is so important to keep this new generation regulated, because only if they regulate it, you can trace them through the chain, and you have methods to find them where they are. And if they would be deregulated, the plant breeders, the farmers wouldn't even know what they grow. And consumers could also not be sure that their food is not contaminated if it's because nobody would know it. And this is one of the key reasons why we really think they must get regulated to give farmers and the consumers a choice what they want to eat or which seeds they want to work with.
So does it mean that if this new law, I suppose, or regulation comes in the EU, that when I go to my local supermarket, I will no longer be given the information on the tin or the packet or whatever that this contains GMOs because they're these new GMOs?
This is exactly the point. We think consumers have a right to choose what they want to eat. We don't say GMOs should be banned completely, but we think it's really important that everybody has the right to take a well-informed decision what they want to eat or if their farmers want to produce something. And this is why labeling is crucial, and this is why we say new GMOs are GMO and must be regulated as GMOs. So we all know and can take a well-informed decision what we want and what we don't want.
What are Friends of the Earth hoping will be the outcome of this intervention? Because you've published a report and you'll be able to tell us where people can access that, I guess. And presumably we will hopefully be seeing some reaction in the media and possibly even from the Commission. But what are you hoping will come out of this?
For us it's very clear. The Commission promised a strategy for sustainable food systems to have fairer, greener, more environmental food produced. And now they opened this process and this whole idea that a new generation of GM crops could enter our fields, could enter our plates without safety checks and labeling. And for this reason, we alerted the public, we alerted media and say, this consultation, how it is done, cannot be a starting point to change GMO legislation and to keep farmers and consumers in the dark about their food.
And we all thought that the EU was pretty hot on the farm to fork law, so this is actually just completely throwing that in the bin, isn't it?
Yes. We really believe that we need greener, more environmental and fairer food systems. So we fully support the general approach of the European Commission towards redirect the way how we produce food. But we are heavily concerned that this process was actually captured by the biotech industry and their attempt to weaken the GM safety laws to get rid of labeling for GM food. And this is why we brought this to public attention.
That is Mütter Schimpf from Friends of the Earth. Can people access your report anywhere online?
Yes, it's on our website.
So that is friendsoftheeartheurope.org if you want to find out more about whether or not the Commission is bending its own rules in order to rewrite the safety of GMOs. That's what Friends of the Earth say according to new research. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.